The following program may contain strong language and mature content. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, good morning, family. Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, as my girl Andre Burke used to say. It's Friday, and it's Friday. It's Friday, honey. We have been dealing with this week all week long, whatever that looked like for you. For some of us, it was a little stressful. And I think most times it's a little stressful. Starting with Monday all the way to yesterday, man, yesterday probably about 11:30, I was still working on a special project. And so we finally got it done. We got it turned in. And it is what it is. Give me a minute to laugh because I really have turned my whole thinking around as it relates to things that I cannot control, things I cannot be in charge of. I am not in charge of grown people. I'm in charge of grown people, but I'm not in charge. I mean, it's like you do what you know you're supposed to do, right? And when you don't, then there are consequences and that goes for all of us. So I don't know why I'm talking about all of this, but I just want you to know that no one is in charge of you. You are in charge of yourself. And it goes both ways. It's like you're in charge of yourself, and at the same time, you're in charge of the good things you do. You're in charge of the things that you do that are not so good. You're in charge of being responsible for the things that you're responsible for. So just do the stuff you're supposed to do. I'm not fussing at you guys. I'm sorry. You just got it this morning, okay? Let's get to the mantra because this girl has got a lot going on. So, the best way that we start our show is, I need this mantra today, girl. Listen here. I need to say the mantra. So let's get to it. We'll celebrate the end of the week. First of all, we're going to take some deep breaths. Let's do it. Let's just take some deep breaths because I need a deep breath. I think I'm going to take 3 because I need all 3 of them, okay? So let's just close our eyes and take a deep breath and blow it out. One more time. Last time. Okay. I think I have calmed down. And if you know me, you know, okay? So let's get into our mantra. Let's take a minute here to share some of our little love bits with each other, to encourage one another, and encourage ourselves mostly, okay? So the first thing I always start with is letting you know that it's okay. It's okay. Look at your neighbor and say, it's okay. It's okay for you not to know everything. You don't have to know everything. It's okay for you to make mistakes. You can make mistakes. It's okay for you to be you, be yourself. Now, as long as you are not infiltrating on someone else's personal space and who they are, be you, do you, boo. It's okay. It's okay to ask for help. Some of us struggle with that. Uh, Hello. It's okay for you to have, bad days. You're going to have them. They're going to come. And guess what? Just deal with them. Just go through it. It's okay for you to start over. It's okay for you to set boundaries. Really, it is okay. And it's really good for you to set boundaries. You should set boundaries. Look, tell somebody I'm setting a boundary today and I'm going to stick with it. It's okay for you to be less than perfect. Some of us struggle with that whole little piece of being perfect or having everything that you do be perfect. Look, we're not perfect. And it's okay for us to know that we're not perfect, be aware that we're not perfect, and to move in this world like we are imperfect beings because we are. Now, should we be striving for perfection? Absolutely. But to walk around like we're perfect, you're setting yourself up. Exactly. Yes. It's okay for you to say no. It's a complete sentence. We keep saying that. And then it's okay for you to not be okay. Sometimes you're just not okay. Okay. But don't stay not okay for a very long time. Do whatever it takes for you to process your way through not being okay. Okay. Let me let you know this. I want you to know that you are loved. You are worthy. Yeah. Your feelings are valid and you are enough. I have a t-shirt that says, "Girl, you are enough." And every time I wear that t-shirt out in public, I love t-shirts, by the way. Every time I wear that "Girl, you are enough" t-shirt, when I tell you, women always have, commentary for me. They love the t-shirt. And I'm not just talking about sisters. It sometimes is my other less melanated sisters, whomever. They love that t-shirt because sometimes as women, as females, as moms, as daughters, as aunties, as co-workers, as bosses, as whatever it may be, we feel like we're not enough. We're always striving to be more. And that's okay. We should strive to be more. We should always have some goals in mind to do more, be more, whatever that is for you. But sometimes you have to know that right where you are enough for right now. For right now, in this moment, you are enough. I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but let me tell you, sis, you are enough. Brother, if you're watching, you are enough. You're okay. You're okay. All right. So we took our deep breaths. Our breath is just to kind of ground yourself, let you know, or to let you or make you aware of how you feel in the moment right now, and to allow you to just kind of silently give thanks to God for all that He's doing in and through your life. I mean, this is our moment to just be right where we are and affirm ourselves and just, love on us. So, it's just Kim. It's a show, my live Facebook Live show where I talk about things that are important to me. And hopefully these things are important to you as well. And not just important to you, but helpful to you. Yes. The last show I had my husband on with me, and he's coming on a little later. But we talked about, some subject matters that, dealing with relationships and things like that. And today we're also going to deal with relationships, but we're going to deal with a different type of relationship, not a romantic relationship, but we're going to deal with sibling rivalry. Yeah. Sibling rivalry, which is a very touchy, sensitive topic for most people. Most people who have a sibling, more than one sibling, You're not an only child. And you could be an only child in your own household and you have other siblings elsewhere. You can still have sibling rivalry. It exists between the oldest and the youngest, the middle child and the youngest, the middle child and the oldest. It could be twins. You're kind of button heads for position. Um, and really, a lot of our sibling rivalry is really steeped from the way our parents, I guess, the way our parents raised us and how they related to us as individuals. Um, Hopefully, they didn't do things like compare us or uh, demonstrate love toward one sibling more than the other. Personality, everyone has a personality, and sometimes personalities clash. They do. They just do. They clash because we are human, you know, and it's really important for us to understand, sibling rivalry. Sibling rivalry was in the Bible. You think about Cain and Abel, that was a sibling rivalry. One brother was jealous or envious of the other in his relationship to God. And most people will say things like, oh, well, don't be mad, just fix it. Fix your relationship or fix whatever it is that you need to do. And yeah, okay. Remember we said everyone was responsible for their own behavior, their own everything. However, it's easy to say, but it's not always easy to do because everybody doesn't have the same capacity to do certain things as others. Okay. So I think as we talk about this subject, I want us to do everything in us to be as compassionate as we possibly can. And if we're able, because we're not always able, if we're able to look through the lens or think through the lens of our sibling, if you're experiencing this, or if you have experienced it, even as adults, because we tend to think it goes away, but it doesn't. If that's something that you experience or you have been experiencing, I want to challenge you. I want to challenge you. And it's a challenge, but I want you to be challenged to look through the lens or see the relationship through the lens of that sibling that you may be at odds with, that one that you may be a rival to. And just think about it from their perspective, how they have viewed how mama and daddy and the other siblings and grandma, and were you the cute little kid, the one who had all the you could dance and sing, and you could do all this funny stuff. You had the bigger personality. Maybe the other sibling was quiet, more reserved, more shy, but you just stole the show, right? You were out there. You weren't afraid to liven up the party, and everybody gravitated to you. But that other sibling, maybe that wasn't their personality. Maybe they were uncomfortable, with that. And perhaps, that could have been the start of the sibling rivalry for you. It could be that, I think about this in my own family. And I think about my own children. I have 3 children who are older, and then I have one child who is 11 years younger than the youngest of the 3. That makes sense to you. But I know that when I was raising my older 3 children, I didn't really know what I was doing. I did my best. But you don't really know everything about parenting. You don't really know all the do's and the don'ts, sometimes until after you have made a mistake, after you've blown it, after you've said the wrong thing or you've done the wrong thing, or you made the wrong move. And you make the mistake, and then you and the children, you got to live through it, right? But when I had my youngest child, my daughter Zion, like I said, she was 11 years younger, and she she got to me, okay, I feel like I was a good parent, but I feel like Zion got the better parent because she got the parent that was more mature, had learned a lot as far as parenting was concerned. She got the more patient parent, you know, and she got the parent that was able to like really stay home and be with her. And where I was doing a lot of other things when I was raising my older three children, I was in school, I was working, I was doing this. They were at Granny's house. They was, coming home. The mama was coming home late. She was in school. I mean, it was a lot going on. And so when Zion came along, um, she got the parent that was more stable, more settled. Actually, she got the parent that had more money. That makes a difference right there. Let me tell you, And so I don't see where there was some rivalry. Well, I take that back. When Zion was born, of course, my son, he was the youngest at the time, and it wasn't so much that it was a rivalry, but of course, he was like, "Whoa, what's happening with my position? My position? I'm not the baby anymore," And so that's very common. That's very natural, as a matter of fact. So those are things that we have to think about when we are thinking about sibling rivalry, and we're thinking about our position in the family and how we're related, or how we relate, and what our relationship looks like with our siblings as adults. As adults, I'll just share quickly that, like, even with I have a brother and a sister that we have the same mom and dad. Our mom passed away when we were young, and then dad remarried, and we had, another two more siblings actually. And you know, the family did pretty good, but we did have some issues. We had some problems, you know. Sometimes when you're used to being parented one way, and then you get a new parent, or a step parent. I hate to use that word, but a parent who stepped up. Uh, you there's a difference there. There's something that you're not used to, so it can take a toll on you. It can take a toll on you when you feel like things are not fair. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this. Let me put the disclaimer out there. There was, my mother that stepped up. I don't want to call her my stepmother. She did an excellent job. She did her best, right? And so, but there were other things outside, folks and influences and things like that always kind of get in the way, right? And so, we had our struggles. We went through our struggles, but I'm grateful. And so, even with any sibling rivalry, any sibling issues, because we've had them, um, we have learned how to come back together and love on each other and deal with our differences and even have some conversations. I have a podcast, Coffee with Kim, and if you go back on wherever you get your podcast, there is an episode I did with my sister. As a matter of fact, it was my very first episode, and we talked about our sisterhood. We talked about our relationship, and we talked about where there was a pause in our relationship and how we worked our way back from there. And so we now have the most utmost respect for each other, most love for one another. We've been there for each other through our hard times, difficulties. We greased each other's palms when times were lean on both sides. And so it is a blessing, as well as my brother who's next to me, but there is some estrangement with the one sibling. And then I have my baby brother, who's like my baby. So that's an issue because I thought of him as my own. People saw me, they saw him. When they saw Kim, they saw Wesley, and Wesley was my baby. He was my baby. So, maybe the boundary there was a little off, but you know what? We are good. We're good. We're good. Okay. Perfect. No. Good. Yes. So let me just kind of take a quick deep dive into this. I want to read something to you. This is: many people think of sibling estrangement or rivalry as something that we grow out of. Sadly, this is not always the case. When we speak of sibling estrangement in adulthood, other people may dismiss it or about us being immature, or being dramatic, or being unable to let things go. But what others often cannot see is some deep pain that once was inflicted and could not be quickly turned around. And so that's basically talking about when, like, the sibling rivalry kind of turns into a toxic sibling relationship. And there are many of us out there with toxic sibling relationships, and they come from various reasons. Um, and, we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. Okay. If we're going to be able to forgive and just move on, if we're going to be able to forgive, and deal with whatever that thing was that happened, in the childhood, and make a decision that, no, right now it's not good for us to even just be in a face-to-face relationship. I mean, those are things that you have to make personal choices about. Like my sister and I had a pause. Sometimes when you pause, you're able to kind of deal with your own life, grow up, and make some better decisions for yourself and your relationship with your siblings. So it's really all about what you need as an individual. And you think about it, sibling relationships are very unique. They're unique in the family system because your sibling is the one person or people who are of the same generation in your family system. So like your parents, of course, are in a different generation, your grandparents in a generation above that, your aunties and uncles, they may be in a different generation, and then your own children are generation, below you. And so siblings have a unique place in the family system. They do, because we're all in the same generation. We may be different ages. There may be different spaces between siblings. But it's a very unique kinship connection, if you will, just dealing with life. So I want to quickly talk about a couple things, and then we're gonna go to a break, and then I'm gonna bring in my husband, and we're gonna talk about our positions in our families and how that has affected, our sibling relationships, but from our own perspective, dealing with us, not dealing with what anyone else has done. Okay. Number one reason that reason that can cause sibling rivalry is parental favoritism. Yeah, parental favoritism is definitely something that, and it may not even be obvious to the parent that they are playing favoritism. And it could be because one sibling is more reliable than the other. It could be that they're easier to deal with, personality wise. Or it could be that that parent is looking at that one child going, "Ooh, little Billy is just like me. Aren't I a wonderful person?" And you can start showing favoritism to that child just because you think that, you know, they're easier to deal with, or they're most likely like me. The some other things too. Sometimes there is that golden child and black sheep. Ooh, or the black sheep or scapegoat, relationship. That golden child versus the scapegoat, or the golden child versus the black sheep. We all know that. We all have had that one person in the family who was what they call the black sheep of the family. And it really is like the person that you can just lay all the blame for things. You can lay all the blame for that, for whatever's going on. You can lay all the blame, for that person, or that person is always typically the one who's going to, work outside the box. They don't color inside the lines. They color all over the place, and they walk to the beat of their own drum, and it's not always the best thing, but it's not always the worst thing. Okay. Sometimes it's due to us as parents being immature. Yes, us as parents being immature, not really knowing what to do, how to deal with our children, where they are, what levels they're on, making comparisons, doing things like that. And then it could be the birth order. Yes, how we are set up in our families. And I want to talk about that. But first, we're going to go to a quick break. And then I'm going to bring my husband in and we're going to talk about our birth orders. Okay. Thank you. Be right back. Okay, so we're back, and as promised, I brought my husband. I was gonna say something funny, but I'm not gonna do that. He's back with me, and like I said, this topic can be very sensitive. So I wanted the trigger alert. Okay, trigger alert. Because sometimes we are triggered by the relationships that we have had in our families, the relationships that we've had with our siblings. That can be a very triggering experience. So thank you, Kwame. Trigger warning. When we're talking about these things, be aware of yourself and be aware of how you feel and what you've experienced as far as your relationships with your siblings. But first, before we go into the birth order, because I wanted to talk about that, I wanted to give some other reasons why there may be some sibling rivalry in the family. One is sibling abuse or bullying. Okay. And let me preface it by saying this. Children fighting is not a bad thing. Now, I'm not talking about physical, like, fisticuffs going at it, taking each other down. I'm talking about, having arguments or differences of opinion, not agreeing, and maybe having, some interface there. That is really not a bad thing, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for children to learn socialization, for them to learn how to problem solve, different things like that. Learning social skills, learning that you don't always get your way, that people have differences of opinion, things like that. But when the sibling rivalry or that interfacing or those arguments or things like that turn into physical, issues or problems, and then one person is suffering, at the hand of another, then it turns into some type of abuse or bullying. And those are really important things for us as parents to really pay attention to. It's not cute. It's not funny. He gonna have to learn how to, fight. This is not the stage for your child to learn how to fighting with their sibling. And it's not a good message to send to the other sibling who's doing all the punching. It's not a good message to that person to say, it's okay. It's okay for you to beat up your little brother or your little sister because you're getting them ready for life. You're getting them prepared. It's not. It's abuse and it's bullying and it's hurtful and it develops into other issues when that person grows up or as they grow up. Look, listen, folks, the things that have happened in our childhood have an effect on us. They do. Let's just point blank, for real, that is the truth. We cannot say, oh, you just forget the stuff that happened to you when you were a kid and you move on and you're this wonderful adult. No. A lot of the issues and problems that we deal with, the stressors, the anxieties, all of that comes from that place of what was going on when we were kids. What things were addressed, what things were not addressed. What unresolved issues do we have? And they impact us as we grow older. So, when it comes to sibling abuse or bullying, how do you know how deeply you were affected by that? Well, by maybe your interactions with other people, your interactions, with your children, with your spouse. If even talking about that, or dealing with it, or your sibling coming around and being in your space for any period of time has an effect on your behavior afterwards, and it takes you a whole week to get your life together after you've had interaction with that particular sibling because you've been triggered, then that's a problem. That is definitely a problem. And so when it starts dealing with our feelings, our behaviors, and our personal relationships, then there's something we got to do something about that. We have to figure out some ways to deal with that. So I brought my husband here because the funny thing about us as a married couple, we come from like the both ends of the spectrum when it comes to siblings.
Right.
We both grew up in a family of 5. He was in a family all boys, and I was in a family, it's just me and my sister, 2 girls and 3 boys. And I'm the oldest in my family. Guess what he is? Tell him.
The baby, as my mom would say, the youngest, but she would say the baby.
And let me just say this,
going
right?
On 6, like, that's my baby.
Right,
Okay.
all the time. But let me say this. When I first married into my husband's family, because he was the baby of the family, the youngest of the family, they saw him as that, especially his mom and dad. Now, I'm the oldest, and my parents saw me as that. So, we were treated differently in our families. So when his parents would treat me like, oh, they're the babies, I was just kind of like, what babies? We ain't babies. Because that was the way I was treated in my family. I'm the oldest, the more responsible, the one who has to take care of the other ones, that type of thing. And so it was a little difficult for me to accept that type of a love that was ingratiated upon me as being the baby of the family. As I got older and smarter and less and mature, I figured that out. But in the very beginning, it was difficult for me to accept that. So here we are, the oldest and the youngest. And truly, it did have an effect on our relationship because I saw things differently than he did. So, I don't know if you want to speak to your perspective on being.
Yes. Wow. You guys probably see I'm looking like a deer in the headlights sitting here. I'm usually not like this. I'm usually like, myself and spry. But I had to really take some deep perspective, introspective myself in dealing with this subject because being the baby or the youngest of the family, it still has lasting effect upon me. But my wife asked me if I wanted to be on the show this week. I was like, maybe next week, because it really it's a serious situation for me. I feel injured. I feel a lot of things, but I want to examine me. I'm not trying to examine who caused what or who did this or makes me feel this way. I want to deal with me.
Yeah.
My insecurities, even at 60 years old, just turned 60 last November. But what are the things that make me feel insecure? What are the things that happen in the house that still affect me if I'm out in public? I'm a public speaker. I'm a pastor. And I speak different places. I go literally around the globe, been around the globe, preaching and speaking. Just in Sacramento the other week, getting an award from, the state of California, things like that. When I'm in those circles, what causes me to pull back or to push forward? Sometimes I can push forward and push too hard because I'm trying to be heard. Many times the youngest sibling just trying to be heard. Oh, be quiet. Get over here. Just, man, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel unheard. And not that those things are intentional,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the way it is. You're like, yeah, whatever, and you're struggling to be heard. And then sometimes you push too hard to be heard, where you begin to
Mm-hmm.
hurt and offend other people.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's why I want to look at me. I want to look at the other siblings, and and we do need work. I must say that. And I hope if my brothers see this, they know I'm saying this from a real respectful place. I'm not saying it to hurt, cut, slash anybody. William T. Irvin wants to deal with William T. Irvin. I want to deal with me and my stuff and my issues.
That's
And
good.
I don't know I'm talking a lot, but you got me going. But there's some deep seated emotional stuff. Me and a good friend, a doctor friend of mine, just, real deep brother, goes around the world speaking about economists, economy and things like he's a black economist. And we had this conversation because he's the baby. And then sometimes we come around, it's like, oh, here comes Mr. Flashy. Here comes Mr. Doing Too Much. I like nice things, nice stuff, nice clothes, nice car. I like nice stuff. One of my godsons, Andre, plays the drum set. I like going to eat with God did. He's like a king. He's like a king every time, And I just believe in the niceties of life. I don't believe in denying myself things. If it's affordable, I'm not putting this out on the street. We're not homeless because of it. But to some people, he's doing too much. He's doing way too much. Maybe that's part of me saying, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be individual. I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to do the things the way you did it or the steps you took. I have to be my own creative person. Sometimes I believe that the youngest is expected to be like the one before or the two before or the three before or the four before, whatever it is in your family. You're expected to be that, but I'm my own person. Yeah. And like I said, and sometimes parents can play into that, the way they treat you, because like you said, our youngest one, we know a lot now that we didn't know back then. Right. She gets away with murder. She gets away with everything. And I can see that now about me. Maybe it felt that way. I got away with things that others didn't. So I'm really opening myself to be vulnerable. Right. It's a very vulnerable space for me to be in right now. It's a very vulnerable space for me. But
I think that kind of what you just said, just right there, plays into what I talked about earlier about trying to see things from your siblings' perspective, see it from their lens, and maybe just what you said. There was a revelation, maybe not a new revelation for yourself, but a revelation enough to say, maybe they saw it that way. Maybe they felt a way because mom and dad, treated me differently. And you do tend to treat the baby differently.
And they have more money.
You do.
Like you just said.
You do. You tend to treat the baby differently.
Yeah, they have more resources with me.
We had a lot more resources. We lived differently. We lived in a different area, and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely something that you have to dig deep and look into.
Even your family was like that, because you guys were like in the jungle, they call it, over there in part of LA. And then you eventually, when the younger siblings came on, y'all was in Cerritos, which is a suburbio community.
We did.
And we were living better, driving better,
right.
So I mean, there's some dynamics that are definitely true.
Yeah. And the parent thing. So that's why it's so important for us to say all of this, because if you are parents and you're the parent of more than one child, you really have to be careful as it relates to, how you're parenting and being careful to know what your children are feeling or thinking about, whatever, how you're treating them opposed to their sibling. And don't just knock it. Don't just say, you're just being sensitive or whatever. Really take a look at it. Think about some of the things that you've said to one child in the presence of another.
Wow.
Think about how you've treated, one child in the presence of another. Yeah. It's like you really have to take those things under consideration. I want to quickly, because we only have 10 minutes. Okay. So I want to quickly talk about what are some things that we might be able to do, because we don't have no solutions for you per se, because every situation is different. And you would have to unpack it all, in a open setting with maybe a therapist or maybe just someone in the family who could talk and be, that person to kind of be in the middle of things, to know what exactly you need to do as siblings to get it together. But there are some things that can be done. First of all, dealing with how you really feel about your relationship with your sibling. How do you really feel about that relationship? Notice what your triggers are. And then this is really important. Know that whatever that relationship was, if it spills over into your other relationships. So if it spills over into how you are a friend, if it spills over into how you are a partner, how you are a parent, those are things that it's not always about what mom and dad did. Sometimes it's about how we related to our siblings when it comes to us as adults dealing with our peers. So, all of
And
that.
spouses would be, like you said, partner spouses.
Spouses, all of that.
We've had to realize, man,
And I think there was somebody asked a question,
Yeah.
Kwame. It was a question. Did our positions, I think it was, does that affect the dynamic of it? Has.
Indeed.
It has. I'll say this. It has, because in the past, I think I've been a little less sensitive to how he felt about his position in the family and how his family or his siblings saw him or what they thought of him, where I was like, well, why does that matter? Because I'm the oldest, and so I'm the one in that position his siblings were in, and I'm thinking, what? Who cares?
Well, as a youngest, you're a approval seeker by nature. How'd I do? How's my football game? We're all football players. How's my football game? You did all right. No, man, you did okay. That's not what everybody else said. Everybody else said I had a great game. Y'all just said I just did okay, But the frustration of, maybe having to take me to practice, and the parents don't want to take me. Maybe the frustration of pick me up, drop me off, deal with me. Then they're trying to still live their own life. Because sometimes an older sibling has to sacrifice for the younger siblings. They may want to go on a date. Now you got to take away from football practice first. Okay, you know what I mean? So I have to think about those things. What are they sacrificing that I can get what I need to get?
Right. And two, also think about, you were a kid. So kids have certain behaviors, right? And so whereas we may see it from a perspective of, I was this really sweet kid who had, my sibling had to take me to football practice, and I was just really wonderful when I got in the car, and I was so calm and quiet. But you may have been a complete brat.
Me?
Yeah, you. You may have been I'm not just saying not just you, but in general. People, you may have been a complete brat when you were little, and so, hey, that could have been part of the problem. Darnell says, we all have different personalities, and as a grown man now, I only deal with one sibling, and the others I really don't speak to because we just don't get along. Darnell, that happens.
I hear you.
That happens, that happens. And we have to be aware of our unrealistic expectations. And we have to, set boundaries for ourselves where we're not abusing and we're not being abused. Okay. It's a hard decision.
Number 5 is where I'm headed, but go ahead.
It's a hard decision when you have to step away from a relationship with someone, especially with someone that you are related to blood-wise. I heard a saying, and I think I have reposted it, saying blood doesn't make you family, it makes you related.
Wow.
And so, blood doesn't always make you family, it makes you related. Because we can have the same blood running through our veins with people, and guess what? We don't feel like family. We don't always feel like family in that regard. So that could just be true. Now, setting boundaries, as an adult with your siblings, and if those boundaries get crossed, then I have to be honest about how I'm going to deal with that, and to keep things the way they should be, or to keep down the power struggles and all that in the family. Perhaps I need to just kind of take a step back, and just, work on me. Like my husband said, he's working on him. And it's not that you set a boundary, you say, that's it, I'm done. But even if you do, just leave the door cracked. Just leave it cracked a little bit, so that perhaps we get older, we learn something, we have an experience, and we're able to kind of ease our way, or at least peek in the door and say, hey, you there? You still there? Instead of just closing that door completely. Okay. Sure. Sibling therapy, that's something else that we can do. Yeah, we can get into therapy. Yeah. We've been doing that. Yeah, but all parties need to be ready. Right. All parties, and that's got to be one of the most difficult therapy sessions is sibling therapy, because we're going to be opening Pandora's box. All kinds of things, right, that happen. Maybe that I didn't remember that happened, but you as a sibling remembered it happened, so on and so forth. And I think basically knowing what that relationship is, really honestly knowing what that relationship is, because the one young man, Darnell, said, look, I deal with one sibling and I don't really deal with the others, and not being mad at, if I'm just dealing with you, I can't be mad at you if you're able to deal with the other 2 or 3. I have to know where I stand in my reasoning for being in a position that I'm in and being okay with that. So we're going to stop here, because we could just go on and on with this. We'll probably come back in not next week, but the week after, because it's a bi-weekly show. We can't change another person's personality. We are not responsible for it. We definitely can't change our siblings' personalities, but we can be in charge of how we respond to it, how we set up boundaries, and how we move. True. We don't have to let it just set us off and make us crazy. And, we come home and we're, kicking the dog and beating holes in the walls because we're mad at a sibling. Make a choice on how you're going to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And be honest with yourself. Don't make yourself the victim. Don't make yourself the one that everybody, the scapegoat, if you will. But be honest with yourself about who you are and how you behaved in that relationship, even as kids. And perhaps that's something that you can grow from. Okay, love you. Until the next time. You take care and you stay safe. Bye.